Hello Year 7. I wanted to take a moment to explain task 3 on your Forces 1 project where you were drawing a graph. Let's have a look at it together. Just wanted to make sure that you're clear how we draw the graph and how we choose what to put on our X and Y axis. So here we have the question. Distance time graphs. C3PO went for a walk and the distance at times along the journey were recorded in the table. Plot a graph to show the journey and remember to use a dot to dot, not the usual line of best fit. So how do we know what to put on the X and what to put on the Y? Well, we need to know our independent and our dependent variables. Our independent variable will go on the X and our dependent variable goes on the Y axis. How do we work that out though? Well, if we look in the question, let's see, what is it that we are fixing and changing? And what is it that we're measuring? So we've got C3PO went for a walk and the distance at times along the journey were recorded in a table. So we've got specific times, 0, 60, 120, 180 and so on, seconds. And then we've recorded how far C3PO had got at that point. So after 60 seconds, he's travelled 100 metres. After 120, he's travelled 400. After 240, he's travelled 1200. So there we're changing the time and we're looking and we're measuring how far C3PO has gone in that time. So for this case, the time is our independent variable, and so that goes on our x-axis, and the distance is our dependent variable. Now, here's my graph. I know you would have drawn a beautiful hand-drawn graph, but I've cheated and used Excel. But it should show approximately the same shape as yours. And let's have a look at what I wanted to point out with this. So firstly, don't forget a title. So it's a distance time graph for C3PO's walk. We've got our y-axis labelled, distance travelled in metres, and you can see that the scale on the y-axis is an even scale. I did see some people only write down the distances that were in the table. So on their scale, and they used a good scale, they had even spacings, but they actually labelled 100, 400, 800, etc., rather than saying 200, 400, 600, 800, 1,000, and then plotting their points in the right place. So just be careful now. It's not that your graph was wrong, it's just that we can improve the quality of our presentation, which is really important as we're developing as scientists. The y-axis, we've got our time and we've got our nice label there with the units and a good even scale again. And then the points are plotted, and we were told to join the dots in this case because it's a journey, and so therefore there's different things that we're looking at for this graph. Now question 1 says, if the graph has a flat part, well, I can see a flat part. Can you see a flat part? Right in the middle there. I think we've got a flat part. What do you think that means? So when we get questions like that, we need to go to the axes and say, well, what's going on? So when we've got this flat part, we can see that the distance travelled stays at 1600 metres between 300 and 420 seconds. So that means that C3PO's distance hasn't changed during that time period, and that means he must have stopped for a little rest. He was stationary. So the flat part is where he's stationary. What does the slope mean? Well, that means his distance is changing with time. And you looked at an equation that links distance and time to the speed that somebody is moving. And we're asked in question 2 what we think the steepness of the line can tell you. And what we've got is the steepness tells us how far that C3PO moved in a certain time. So if we look at between 120 seconds and 180 seconds, then C3PO moved 400 meters in that time. If we look in the first 60 seconds, he only travelled 100 meters. Now, if he's moved 400 meters in the same amount of time that it took him originally to move 100 meters, that means that he's moving faster. And the gradient of our graph is going to be steeper. So here you've got a steeper slope, he's moving faster, and here he's moving slower, so we have a shallower slope. Hopefully that's helped understand how to tackle that task.